Hi everyone, my name is Helen Lee, or Kexin Lee. I'm a current junior, double majoring in women, gender, and sexuality studies and leadership studies with a minor in theater. Over the past summer, I interned at the Coalition to Abolish Human Trafficking and Slavery in Los Angeles. So I'll refer to this organization as CAST. It's an abbreviation in the rest part of my speech. But first of all, I want to thank Dr. Montadada for connecting me to CAST through our SSIR program last year. So I interned in the Survivor Leadership Program in CAST, where my main job was to help facilitate and plan events for survivor leaders across country, both in and out of this organization. So for example, I planned several weekly and monthly meetings, a weekend retreat, and also several policy discussions for those leaders, where I could just sit in those events and observe and absorb. Yeah, you know what I'm saying. Okay, those are tricky words. But the 2 months in Los Angeles was so important for me, both intellectually and emotionally. As I mentioned before, I study gender studies. So a lot of concepts that I want to share with you today, privilege, tokenism, and empathy, those were concepts that was not unfamiliar to me at all before my summer. However, I knew these words. I started to learn those words in a quite abstract and theoretical approach, and I learned them in English. However, my internship in CAST really helped me contextualize those concepts. And I don't know if there is a language that's called global language, but if there is one, and I think that's love, and I think CAST taught me how to know those concepts by love, this global language. So I guess what I want to share with all of you today is basically my intellectual exploration to those concepts, basically how I changed my concepts surrounding those words. And all of those changing points are paired with several emotional high points in my 2 months in Los Angeles. So first of all, privilege. While I was studying this word, I always link privilege and oppression with identity politics. So basically, I personally understood oppression through my own femaleness, my Asianness. But that was still quite abstract for me. And I reshaped my understanding toward privilege after the first weekend in CAST. That was a Friday, and that was the day that I knew that actually I was the only person in my department, the Survivor Leadership Program, who was not a survivor. And I was the only one in that department who ever graduated from high school and who is currently receiving college education. And I actually speak and write better English than all of my supervisors do, because all of them, they were immigrants. And that just terrifies me. Because so for a solid 3 or 4 days, I didn't know how to react. I didn't know how to interact with people who are my supervisors. But I was the person who obviously held so much privilege in the department. So I was really shocked. And meanwhile, I was also the youngest person in CAST, the whole organization, and I was also the only one who didn't receive any comprehensive social service or legal training. So I was really at this kind of complex point that I need to code switch, and I need to find a way to to best situate myself and to know myself. So I was really confused. And the strategy came out with this kind of confusion is my realization of how important humbleness is for me and for people, and how important to be always curious and respect the nuance and diversity in human experiences. So after being shocked for 4 days, I started to see that how those identities of survivor, of education, and of where we come from just can't define us, because what does identity mean? It's just basically a system that tries to put category on us. What really defines us is the experiences we have, what teared us down, what brought us back together, and who we love. So I saw my supervisors, a 40-year-old single mother of 3 children coming from Indonesia who was labor trafficked. And those were all the tags that put on her. And I saw her rate Judith Butler, a really hard theorist I never really understood. And she was communicating with me in a way to understand Judith Butler that was so changing, that was so mind-blowing to me. And I saw her speak in a national conference so confidently with her broken English that just changed people's minds and pushed people to really work for policy changes. And that just empowered me so much and really changed me how to understand privilege and how maybe I should not talk about privilege anymore, but just strength that's embedded in people, that's embedded behind those vulnerability. So that's one story. And the second story is like, as I mentioned, I'm not a survivor, and a lot of people who work in CAS are survivors. And I study about human trafficking in Dr. Dada's class, in those textbooks, and online in those movies. That was the topic that was honestly really distant to me. And again, I learned about human trafficking in English, a language that is essentially strange to me. And it was, I remember the fourth week of my internship, it was a Tuesday. I was supposed to have a teleconference with Dr. Miller, and I heard Chinese. I heard Chinese speaking in CAS at front desk. And normally we would have translators for people who don't speak English that well, but I just heard that person just really struggling, trying to announce English, and I was like, it was for 10 minutes straight. I was like, probably I should step out and see if that person needs help. And turns out that the translator is out that day, and they couldn't find a person online. So I basically played the role of translator for that person. And then after I walked that person out, I found out that she is from the part of China, which is basically 2-hour drive from my city. And we shared a dialect. So I was talking to her for like an hour in our dialect. And I found out that she's 35 years old. She was a high school teacher teaching math in China. She's educated. She got involved into human trafficking because she wanted to escape domestic abuse from her household. And then she invited me to dinner next weekend, and she cooked me a very authentic Chinese dinner that I can't have in the States in the restaurants. And I guess from that person, I really got to know how close I can get to the issue of human trafficking while still having boundary to not speak for them. And the fact that she's so educated just made me realize that I could have been in that situation. Well, actually, anyone sitting in this room right now could have been a victim of human trafficking. But because of how the system works, how this identity politics works, we've been predefined certain privileges and vulnerabilities that shielded us from that situation. And sometimes, of course, luck and destiny played a role in it. So that's how close I could get to that topic. And another story related to this point is that was a monthly discussion for a survivor leadership group in local LA called Resilient Voices. And they had a new member that night, a black woman. So she came into the room without any trigger warning, just threw out her story and made everyone cry. She's a mother of 5 children, all of them daughters. All of them, including her, so 6 women, all of them experienced severe mental illness. And they were homeless up until to the point that she came to the group. So, and she told us that her trafficker assaulted her and her daughters multiple times in the year, that they had to run. And it's actually the first time for her to really become an activist until the point that she stepped into our room, this group. And she's saying that I just have to be a hero for my daughters. Because at this point, I'm no longer a victim, I am a mother. And actually the sentence that I have to be a hero for my daughter was what my mom kept saying when I was bullied in elementary school. So that just connected me. So I guess the feeling that I could get close to this topic was not because I met a woman who looked like me, who was also from China, but it's because I realized that how close human experiences can get, that how dependent we live upon each other, that race, nationality, and language don't define us, they don't divide us. Well, some people want to divide us by that. But there's always something that I can't quite describe right now by language now. They just always bring us together, that we stick together and then we fight together. Because they are all mothers and we're all humans. And that's just how impactful that experience has brought me. The last story is about tokenism. It's actually getting quite late to my internship. I guess it's the second last week. My supervisor, Ima Matrol, who's a famous national survivor leader, she came into the office crying. And that was not that professional, and that was really terrifying for an intern to see. But she trusted me enough to tell me what happened. So she was attending a conference for surrounding human trafficking in LA that morning. She came there as an expert on policies. But what really happened in the conference was people pushing her to tell her stories again and again in different panels. And they kind of skip her when they want to hear some more professional and intellectual insights on how we can change the current system. Anima was courageous enough to step out again and share her insights because, well, obviously she has experienced that more than once. So she shared her story of how that, even though now she's a leader in caste, she's still bringing her 3 children with her to live with her friend because she can't find an affordable housing in LA. So she shared that and trying to push people to rethink the fund for survivors and how we can better just help them build their lives. And how those people respond to her was trying to imply that maybe you should work harder. And maybe you should do more researches on what current resources we have. But I think she's already an expert in that. So that just broke her down that morning. And she's a quite tough woman, honestly. And that just made me think that the movement, the anti-trafficking movement that I'm personally involved in right now, how problematic that is. Who is leading that movement? Ima is the leader of my department, but she's not the leader of caste. And I don't think there is any organization in the United States of anti-trafficking that's led by a survivor leader. And why? Because they are not knowledgeable, because they didn't graduate from high school, because they are single mothers with 3 children. And I don't think so. They are women who read Judith Butler. A lot of college students couldn't even understand the text. And they're great public speakers, and they're just fighters. But in the reality, they are just tokens in a lot of ways to help a certain nonprofit to make their image look better, to make their image look more inclusive, to make some professionals trying to get their work done. But for those survivors, their own work needs to get done. So yeah, those are several stories I want to share with you. Those are my emotional high points. Some of them really broke me down emotionally, and some of them really empowered me. But I guess my journey in caste, it's not really a professional journey per se. I never wore suit and tie to that nonprofit. And my supervisor bought me alcohol, even that was illegal. I'm under 21, but she didn't care. Please don't tell. That was experience of family, of chosen family. I was there for 2 months, and Ima, my supervisor, sent me her homemade banana bread 3 times since I left. So I got banana bread every weekend, and that was just a sweet taste. So I guess that was experience that reshaped how I understand those theoretical terms in a really personal and in a really loving way. And just, again, make me think again and again what is a livable life and what is human and how we should treat and love each other. Yeah, thank you.